One country will have an obesity rate of 74% by the year 2100. You've probably never considered which one. Let's start in 1975. The obesity epidemic hasn't started yet. In the United States, just 12% of adults are obese. Fast food is still a novelty. McDonald's has fewer than 4,000 locations worldwide. High fructose corn syrup has barely entered the food supply. People eat at home. Portions are smaller, and almost no one is talking about an obesity crisis, because there isn't one yet. But the chart is already telling a story. Finland and Sweden are near the top, not because their food is bad, quite the opposite. It's because their data is more reliable. Reporting is better. The developing world's numbers won't catch up until decades later. Now we move to 1990. 15 years later, and the United States has crossed 20%. That's 1 in 5 adults. Nutritionists are starting to panic. The correlation with fast food expansion is undeniable. By 1990, McDonald's has over 12,000 locations. Burger King, Wendy's, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut. The American food environment has fundamentally changed. Portion sizes have doubled since the 1950s. A medium Coca-Cola in 1972 was 12 ounces. By 2000, it's 32. The food industry discovered something powerful. Bigger portions feel like better value. People don't consciously eat more. They just eat what's in front of them. High fructose corn syrup is now in almost everything. It's cheaper than sugar. It extends shelf life. And the body processes it differently than traditional sweeteners, in ways that may disrupt hunger signals. The science is still debated, but the trend is not. By 2000, the United States is approaching 30%, 1 in 3 adults. And something interesting is happening in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia has discovered fast food. Saudi Arabia's transformation is one of the most dramatic stories in this entire data set. In 1975, just 5% of Saudi adults were obese. The country was poor, largely rural, and physically active by necessity. But oil wealth changed everything, and it changed it fast. By 2000, Saudi Arabia is at 24%. By 2010, it crosses 34%, more than the United States. Think about what happened in just 35 years. Cars replaced walking. Air conditioning made outdoor activity unbearable for much of the year. Oil money brought every major American fast food chain to every Saudi city. And the traditional diet of dates, fish, and whole grains gave way to processed food, refined carbohydrates, and supersized portions. This is the pattern of rapid economic development colliding with a global food environment designed by American corporations. Saudi Arabia went through the same transition the United States did, but in a fraction of the time. Mexico tells a similar story. In 1975, Mexico's obesity rate was low. But after the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994, ultra-processed food flooded the Mexican market. American companies could now sell their products in Mexico without the tariffs that had protected local food industries. The result was devastating for public health. By 2022, Mexico's adult obesity rate had crossed 36%, surpassing the United States. The countries that industrialized slowly, the ones that kept their traditional diets through the process, look completely different. Japan is one of the most striking examples. Japan in 2022 has an obesity rate of under 5%. That's roughly 10 times lower than the United States. Why? The Japanese diet, high in fish, vegetables, fermented foods, and small portions, has proven remarkably resistant to global food trends. School lunch programs enforce nutritional standards. Cultural norms around eating mean restaurants serve smaller portions. And Japan's food culture assigns social value to quality, not quantity. Japan is a glimpse of what's possible, but Japan is also the exception. The global trend is unmistakable. Now we enter the projection era. Post-2022, these numbers are based on IHME and Lancet 2025 modeling. the most comprehensive obesity forecasting study ever published. Researchers from the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation tracked trends across 204 countries and projected forward to 2050. We've extended those trends to 2100 based on the underlying drivers. 2030, Saudi Arabia crosses 50%. Egypt approaches 40%. The Middle East is experiencing the fastest-growing obesity crisis in world history. The culprit is clear: rapid urbanization, a food environment dominated by ultra-processed products, reduced physical activity, and decades of government subsidies that made unhealthy food cheap and accessible. The Lancet study highlighted something troubling about the Middle East. Unlike Western countries, which are starting to see obesity rates plateau, partly through public health campaigns, taxation on sugary drinks, and awareness, Middle Eastern rates are still accelerating. The plateau hasn't arrived yet. 2050, Egypt is projected above 55%, Saudi Arabia approaches 65%. But look at who is declining: Germany, the United Kingdom, Canada. Countries with strong public health systems that have implemented sugar taxes, food labeling requirements, and advertising restrictions on unhealthy food marketed to children. The United Kingdom banned junk food advertising before the 9 p.m. watershed in 2023. Norway has strict marketing rules. Mexico introduced a mandatory black warning label system on ultra-processed foods in 2020. Early evidence suggests these policies work, but slowly. The question is whether the Middle East and South Asia will implement similar policies before the crisis becomes irreversible. 2100. 75 years into the future. The projections become more uncertain here, but the structural drivers don't disappear. Saudi Arabia is modeled at 74%, Egypt above 60%. The United States drops to 38%. Reform has worked, but not enough. Mexico falls to 32% as food policy improvements take hold. In Japan, still the outlier, still below 9%. The country that never fully abandoned its traditional diet, never allowed portion sizes to spiral, never normalized ultra-processed food as a staple, is still the country where you're least likely to be obese. What does this chart tell us? It tells us that obesity is not primarily about individual willpower. It's about food environments. Countries that restructured their food environments saw rates stabilize or decline. Countries that allowed corporations